According to legend, during his imprisonment, St. Valentine healed the daughter of the jailer, and it was right before his execution, and he wrote a letter signed to her, and in the bottom, in the signature, it was, "Your Valentine." Oh. And since that time, the sending of a card as being someone's Valentine has come to indicate this love that we would have for one another. And today, though, in our modern culture, it seems that while it's good to show appreciation and love for others, that it's somewhat been hijacked by Hershey's and Hallmark. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against Valentine's Day or the promotion of romantic love. As a matter of fact, I'm a pretty big fan of both. But I think that there's a much deeper understanding in the need to demonstrate love that goes far beyond an annual box of candy and a card. Now, the need to display in love not only goes deeper, and it's meant to be not confined to a relationship between sweethearts and husbands and wives, but this time I want to talk to those that are married here today, just in case, and then we're going to talk more on a larger scale here in just a moment. But I want you to understand that if you're married today and you didn't know it was Valentine's Day, stay cool. Wipe the expression of terror off your face. Smile. Look at your spouse and just nod in a loving way. Try not to show the panic. Don't start thinking about how to redeem yourself at this particular point in time, because you'll miss the entire message today by trying to strategize a way out of the hole in which you found yourself to be. There may still be time for you to redeem yourself. Guys, don't lose your cool. Now, I also want to let you in on what I believe is a little good advice. Never, ever, ever, guys, believe your wife when she says, "I want nothing for Valentine's Day." Regardless of your relationship. "Honey, what do you want for Valentine's Day?" "Oh, nothing." She doesn't mean it. She's confused. She's misguided. But you won't find out until the day after. And by that time, it will be too late. Now, also be careful. This doesn't mean to rush out between now and dinner time and do the family pack, lovers pack candy and card at Walmart, right? It's funny. Last year, I found myself at one of the marts on the afternoon of Valentine's, and it was funny to sit and watch the guys come in, and they're trying to grab what's left. They're wrestling for these scraggly flowers that are left there and trying to find cards, and by that time, it's too late. So sit back, enjoy the message, but know that you may be done at this particular point in time. We should never limit the demonstration of our love to a single day or event. As a matter of fact, love should be something that we example in our lives as it pertains to all of those in which we counter, especially those that are the closest to us. But yet at the same time, the problem that we can have is that, this understanding of love is really limited based on our language. You know, when it comes to the English language, we have kind of a one-size-fits-all application to words, and very often it doesn't necessarily allow us to be able to express all that we would have, especially in a word such as love, to where there have been countless volumes written in order to try to just encapsulate its meaning. "Oh, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways." Now, it may provide great reasons and actions that point to love, but the reality is that our language is greatly lacking. Older and more sophisticated languages such as Greek, have numerous words that would express this concept of love. There's a word that speaks specifically to the love of a child. There's the love of money. Another word for the love of family. Another for the love of friends. The love of possession. And there's even a word that encapsulates perfectly how much we love chocolate. The Greeks have a way of defining words that go far beyond our limited scope and imagination of English. And this morning what I want to do is I want to look at just 3 words that really kind of encapsulate the idea, or how we would best understand love as it pertains to our American experience, our American culture, even how we've grown up, and see how it is that we can take and understand and embrace how it is that God loves us in order then that we may be able to love others as we're loved. The first word that I want to talk about is the word Eros. It's a Greek word, and it describes physical attraction, physical passion, that which would happen between members of the opposite sex. And by opposite sex, that's the way it's supposed to be. When it comes to this Eros love, it's the root word is from which we draw the word erotic, and it's the feelings that you have for somebody that's based on passion, physical attraction. Unfortunately, within our culture, there's a counterpart to this that's a counterfeit, and that's the word lust. And whereas Eros love is meant to be a pure physical attraction, and in God's design, that which would happen between a husband and a wife, unfortunately, we've taken it and seen it abused so much by this characteristic of lust that people will often think that somehow or another that physical attraction in itself equals love. And yet, while even far too often people will take physical attraction beyond the boundaries of what the Bible would describe as true love, it cannot be sustained on its own. If the relationship is based only on Eros, well, it's really based in lust, and it's not going to endure. Oh, the second word that I want to introduce you to is the word phileo. Phileo describes the love that is built on common interests and desire. It's the root word where we get the name Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. The idea of in common, of that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that type of love that is built and brings about relationship on interest and goals and hobbies and just being around someone that you enjoy being in the company of. We often will say, well, he or she is great and we have so much in common. It's where relationships very often start. It's the beginning of many relationships that would start first in a romantic way, that physical Eros love, and then move into that aspect of phileo, the finding in common. But even still, those two items, of physical attraction and many things in common, regardless of if you've been matched on eHarmony or Christian Mingle or not, will not sustain. Because you cannot sustain that which is just physical and that which is mental without having that which goes to the place of being godly. And the third type of love that I want to talk about, the one that I believe is going to be the one that God examples to us and that which we should example to others, well, is that of agape. It's called agape love. And it's interesting because when it comes to the providing of or the supplying of this type of love into relationships, the evidence is clearly there, because so often when I talk to couples that have found this place of running out of love for each other, they'll sit in my office and they'll talk about how when they first got together, oh, it was great. Oh, it was so wonderful. We were just so in love. We went everywhere together. We spent time together. We would talk for hours and hours and hours on the phone. He was so sweet and she was so loving. And now, after this time, the physical has kind of worn off, and what we have in common is just arguing about the things that we don't have in common anymore. I guess what happened is that we fell out of love. You ever heard anybody say that? Oh, we fell in love, but we have fallen out of love. Love is not a basket in which you get to jump in or jump out of. It's not something you can fall in or fall out of. I mean, it's really not. I mean, there's the physical attraction, there's the building of phileo love, the things that you have in common. But if you're really going to experience love for someone, if you're going to cross over into the love that God has for us, it has to cross over into this agape, into what is considered to be and what is rightfully unconditional love. It's unconditional, which means there are what? No conditions. Wow. This is a love that loves you for nothing, regardless of what you do. It's a love that stands regardless of what the other person says or what they do, what they look like, what they don't look like. It's the same word that is used to describe God's love for us that compelled Him to send His Son to this world for our salvation. The Scripture would read, "For God so agape the world that He gave His only begotten Son. This attribute, this aspect, this understanding that agape love is this perfect and unconditional love that is demonstrated by God towards us. And it's a love that is designed to last a lifetime, and it's the love that God has intended that we would share and enjoy with each other. It's His plan. It's His type of love. Now, as a people, as humans, as where we are culturally in this world, we have really messed up this concept of love. This concept of love that we have that is portrayed on the screen or is portrayed even in the music that we listen to, and the idea that love is somehow some emotional response that we have, that if it's exactly right, and if you happen to find your soulmate, and if you find the right person, and if things are good and things are right, then love will flourish and grow. But if it's not the right person, and if it's not something to where you are automatically assigned to your soulmate from day one, then the idea is that the love that we see within the demonstration of our culture is that it's a disposable love. I am so glad that the love that God shows for us is not disposable. Is not that has a limit or a condition or a boundary based on how I feel about someone at that particular moment, or how they have responded to me or for me, how it is that they have taken and demonstrated love that allows me then to love them back. Now, it's interesting because we need to understand that agape love doesn't stand a chance without it being reflected and strengthened and encouraged by God and His Holy Spirit. And it's something that doesn't come easy. It makes sense, though, because in order to really experience the kind of love that God has for us, we should have to work for it, don't you think? Don't you think that if something is really worth having, and we know that God's love for us is worth having, that it would be something that would be worth working for? How many folks do you encounter in your life that fell in and out of love with little or no effort? The idea being that if it's worth having, it's worth working for. But it starts with a choice. We will either choose to love or choose not to love. Agape is a choice and made only possible through God, but at the same time, if it's going to grow, we have to choose to allow it to do so. So how do we choose to agape? How do we choose to really love someone in the way that God loves us? Well, in order to do that, we need to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, picking up in verse 4. 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 13, verse 4. What we see here is we see the Apostle Paul giving us a list of what love is, what agape is. Not just love in the sense of Eros or Phileo. This is what agape, what God's love is demonstrated to us, and how it is that we then can demonstrate love to others. In verse 4, chapter 13, it starts by saying that love suffers long and is kind. Now, how many of you, if you had a choice, would have this not be the starting place for how you want to love people? I mean, the first thing that we're told about love is that it suffers long. How many of you love somebody and you've been suffering long in the presence? Don't put your hand up. Be careful. It's Valentine's Day. Be careful. It's love that suffers long, and it's only attainable through God's Spirit. But you see, long-suffering means that we're able to show love to people even when they're hard to love. Even maybe when they don't show us love in return. And guys, this is the exact same kind of love, though, that God demonstrated to us, because yet while we were still sinners, God loved us and sent us His Son to die on our behalf. While we rejected Him, while we were enemies of God, He still loved us. It's the kind of love that's willing to say, I will patiently wait for you to love me. I will patiently wait, but not only will I patiently wait, but as I am waiting, I'll be kind. It just keeps getting better. You know, there's going to be times when you don't feel like being kind. There's going to be times when kindness is really kind of the last thing on your mind as it pertains to how it is that you want to treat someone that you really do actually love. It may be a spouse or a child or a parent or a friend. Could even be just someone you just met. But kindness is not necessarily on the agenda because of what you are seeing reflected back to you. But yet, this is exactly the type of love that Jesus shows to us. It's the kind of love that's willing to say that I'll wait, but at the same time, it's the kind of love that says that I'm willing to be kind as I do so. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness isn't all that magnanimous. It isn't something that is over the top. An act of kindness can be something very, very simple. An act of kindness can be a smile to somebody that's in a struggle. An act of kindness can be winking at a child that's about to melt down in the grocery store and just needs a reason to break their attention from not getting the candy bar at the checkout stand. An act of kindness can simply be that which you allow someone or you tell someone that you appreciate them when they don't feel so appreciated by others around them. You see, it doesn't have to be something that is over the top, but it has to be something that is purposed, and it has to be something that we recognize and we would strive to do, that while not only being patient, that we would be kind. You know, kindness is something that is so lacking within the world that we live in right now. It's one of those things to where we almost have to purpose to be kind to people. Have you ever noticed it's easier to just be neutral? How many of you can relate to the idea of, I'm just going to the grocery store, the last thing I want to do is interact with anybody. I'm even going to go to the self-checkout because I don't even want to deal with the checker, right? And I just want to be in my own little bubble to the degree that the last thing I want to do is be interactive with anybody, because right now I just don't feel like dealing with anything, anybody, or anything the world has to offer. Anybody besides me ever feel like that? Right. Have you ever had somebody be kind to you when that was happening and it bugged you? We get to be that person. You remember a couple of weeks ago here when we were talking about this idea that we are called to be the light of the world. You see, kindness should be something that we purpose to put on, that we purpose to take with us wherever we go, because it's something that everyone needs. It's something that everyone, hopefully, if done sincerely, will respond to in a positive way. Oh, you may not get the kind of response that you hoped for by being nice to somebody. I mean, there's been times in the grocery store line when I had a whole basket full and the person behind me only had one item, and I'll say, oh, please, go right ahead. And they'll go, it's about time you noticed I was standing here. Have a nice day. But then there's other times. Have you ever noticed that something as simple as that can literally change somebody's entire... Really? You see, kindness is a strong tool. It's a strong attribute of this agape love that we are to take and we're to practice. But then it goes on and it says that love does not envy. Envy. Now, most of the time when we think about being envious or jealous, it has to do with the relationship between people. But guys, understand, it doesn't have to do with, or have to be with the opposite sex in order for it to be envy. It doesn't have to be one of those jealousy type of things that happens. It can be simply being envious of relationships that have nothing to do with physical attraction, but have everything to do with someone that we have something in common with that seems to be doing better than we are. Have you ever looked at what somebody else has and goes, I want some of that? How come they get and I don't? How come we're doing the same thing? How come I'm actually trying harder than they are, but they seem to be getting more of what I want than I do? It's that aspect of being envious, that sense of thinking that somehow or another we're not capable of putting someone or allowing someone's needs or even someone's blessings to be ahead of us. You see, we envy any time that we want our way over others. We can envy things again, that we have in common because of a higher position or a better condition or something that they have that we would think that somehow or another we deserve. And in so doing, we become envious. We become those that are not capable of demonstrating perfect love. But the solution, again, it's work. It's not easy. Is that we should always want the higher position and better things for other people. We should always be striving to lift others up rather than to pull them down. And here's the neat thing. As we would take and encourage others, as we would take and put their needs above ours, there may be a time when we're the one in need of the push. When we're in need of a hand up. And those that we have helped, not that we would give simply to get, but those that have seen the aspect of true and genuine love played out by this virtue of not being envious, by wanting and promoting their best, that they would do the same for us. How wonderful it is to know that somebody else cares about us enough to want the best for us. Then we should be those that would do the same for others. Now, I understand. The person that you help, the person that you encourage may not know and not even recognize or not even appreciate what you do. But let me tell you what, God does. God knows. And it's His love demonstrated to us as we would demonstrate to others that will bring even more of His blessings into our lives. The next one says that love does not parade itself. It's not boastful. It's speaking about motivation and the reason why we do the things that we do. And we should all like to do things for others just to make them feel good and appreciate it, even random acts of kindness and or carefully thought out and orchestrated things in great detail. But the question is, what's the motivation behind it? What's the purpose behind it? I mean, are we designed and hoping to draw attention to ourselves? I love kids around Christmas time. Not because of what they receive, but the presents that they give. Have you ever noticed when a child brings a gift to an adult, it's all about the child? Okay? Because they are seeking approval. They want to know that they've given you something that you enjoy. And how many of you have gotten that really, really dumb gift, but you acted like you really wanted it? Right. I mean, this idea of taking and understanding that there's this aspect of knowing that they're doing it because they want appreciation. They're doing it because they need to be built up. They need to feel good about what they're doing. And so we actually cater to and we allow that to be part of the process because it makes them feel good. But at the same time, it's not something that is so, it doesn't wear so well as an adult, does it? I mean, have you ever had somebody give you something that was just so pleased and proud of themselves that they gave it to you that they couldn't stand telling you how much and how often you should appreciate them for giving it to you? Yeah, I'm really glad I was able to help you out with that. Yeah, if I wouldn't have given you that, you probably wouldn't be alive today. And I'm not trying to remind you of it, but I just want to let you know that if you didn't have that thing, you're alive in me. And every time you see the person, it's like, thank you again. You just want to thank them in advance. You see them coming, thank you! The motivation. Why is it that we do what we do? And is the motivation pure? And if it is, we understand that at that point in time, when it comes to those that we love, we shouldn't ever fail to recognize their contribution, but we need to be careful that we're not holding them on the hook or for the line for the things that we do in love. It's not about trying to hold some sort of account or some sort of list of things that make me in the advantage over one that I would love if my heart and my motives are pure. And it's the same type of thing that we see with God. Aren't you glad that God doesn't keep an account? Yeah. I mean, aren't you glad that God doesn't check your status before He decides to bless you? We would never get a blessing. It's also interesting, though, because we need to understand that there are times within healthy relationships that negotiations are good. I mean, there are times, especially in close relationships with family members or even between husband and wife, to where the idea that, well, if you do this, then I'll do that, that's fun, and it can be meaningful, and it can be something that is rewarding and something that is fun to engage in. But be careful that doesn't become a pattern for how it is that we demonstrate and we show love one for another. The next area says that love's not puffed up. It's not puffed up. It's not the type of love to where we feel that somehow or another that we are more important in the relationship than others are. Well, I'm really glad that you got to know me. I'm sure it's a great benefit to you. Just by knowing me, I'm sure your life is greatly improved. I mean, it doesn't mean that there aren't differences in abilities, that there aren't differences in callings within a relationship, but the understanding that God doesn't hold out different values for different people. And we shouldn't either. God sees every single one of you here today as the one worthy of His Son's death, as His child, His beloved. There is an equal value on each and every one of us in this room today and upon every person in the world in which God came to save through His Son, Jesus Christ. There is no assigning of a higher value. I can't take and look at a relationship and think somehow or another that I'm better in the relationship than you are as it pertains to value in the eyes of God. It's not meant to be so. And it's another thing that I just really love about God, because the reality is God is not an acceptor of man. He's not, or a respecter of man. And if you think about it, we wouldn't be here today if He was. Because if we had to be respectable before God would accept us, none of us would have made it. I mean, I didn't go to God at the time that I accepted Jesus Christ and said, okay, here's the deal. I'll turn my life over to you, and you should really appreciate it because of what you're getting. You should be really happy to get me, God. No. As I did, most of you also came to the Lord at a point in time when we were at our worst. When we were at the lowest point, we had probably, as I did, at least in my case, wrecked my life to the point that where there was nothing I could do to repair it anymore. I was mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually bankrupt, and I came to Jesus, and I threw myself at His feet, and I said, would you take me, please? And He said, yes. And He did so as if I was the greatest prize that He had ever received. And I don't get it. I don't understand. I can't see. I mean, I'd have thought if I was God, I'd have went, oh, man. Another loser in the club. Son, you need to start hanging around with better people. Quit bringing these losers. But no. Accepted me as if I was His favorite. And you know why I know He did that? Because He did that with you too. If you've come to Jesus Christ, He received you as you were His favorite. And only God can do that. And yet He says that when we look at other people, that we need to be realizing that we are not there because we're their gift. That He values us all the same, and everyone has worth and value in the eyes of the Lord. Goes on and says, love does not behave rudely. Without a doubt, one of the biggest problems in our culture. Sadly, it's become acceptable and even expected to be rude under the banner of sarcasm or humor. Over the years, we've been programmed by the media and listening to laugh tracks put behind sarcastic and rude comments, allowing us to believe that somehow or another that that's actually where humor comes from. It would be amazing to watch some of the so-called sitcoms, the situational comedies of the day, and let them play without the laugh track. I think it would change our entire perspective of what we would see based on the words. I can't believe that they said that to that person. That is really out of line. Oh, but when you throw in a whole crowd laughing behind it, all of a sudden it becomes, oh, it's humor. But it's really not funny. It says that love's not rude. And we shouldn't try to cover rudeness with sarcasm in such a way thinking that it's all right. And you know, it's not a matter of just thinking, oh, I was just kidding, or it was just a joke, or it was just something that was meant to be funny. It would be so neat, and I know we can't do it, but it's fun to think about, and these are the things I think about when I'm up way too early in the morning. Can you imagine if over the last 50 years of television, that instead of the shows that we've watched being sarcastic and rude and being propped up with laughter to reinforce that instead they would have been words of encouragement, that there would have been words of praise that would have been poured upon the people, that each person in this situation of comedy would take, or this situational reality TV would take, and instead be encouraging and edifying and building people up. We would live in a completely different world today. We wouldn't think that it was okay to put somebody down. We wouldn't think that it's okay to take and run somebody over with sarcasm. We would realize that there's much more to be had by taking and encouraging and edifying and building up. And guys, understand, this is one of the things that is so important in our homes. It's so important in the group of people that we influence. It's so important here at church that we would be those that would build up rather than tear down. That we would be those that would encourage rather than try to use some sort of veiled excuse of sarcasm as a means of elevating ourselves. What's really interesting is when I say this, I have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that I'm probably one of the greatest violators of this. I'm a really sarcastic guy. I don't know if you notice that or not. I talk a lot. I mean, it's an occupational hazard. It's part of my calling. But the reality is that because I'm good with words, because words seem to come pretty easy, because I talk a lot, I have to also be very, very cautious and very careful to understand that it's easy for me to use those aspects of sarcasm to say something that slights rather than builds. We have to be exceptionally careful, though. And probably one of my pet peeves is when couples will wrap attacks on each other in sarcasm. Constantly digging on each other as a means of trying to correct or direct or to get at the other person. Trying to impress people by demeaning or being rude to or about their spouses. Oh, here she comes again with another burnt offering. She calls it dinner. He keeps buying tools. I don't know why. If he ever tried to use them, he just hurt himself. Guys, husbands and wives should never speak rudely to each other face to face, or even more so, behind each other's back. It should be something that is absolutely off the table. We should strive to never speak rudely about anyone, but especially within a relationship to where we are taking and realizing that God has brought us together as one. We should not be in the habit of at any point in time allowing ourselves to speak poorly or rudely of someone that God has blessed us with and in whom we are forming a relationship of one flesh. Married couples need to make a pact never to talk about each other with anybody else in a way that's demeaning. And guys, if we'll practice this, if we purpose it, and again, it's not easy. Depending on where you live, where you work, where you hang out at, the types of circumstances and situations you find yourself in, there are certain when I was working for the state and working inside of penitentiaries, man, it was just the way you talked. Everybody was rude. Everybody was sarcastic. You had to do a lot of things in order to be able to survive the conditions and the circumstances, but it was amazing how easily that transferred into talking about people that were cared about but not esteemed. How easy it was to rag on the old lady or rag on the old man about what was going on in the house. And what happens then is we form this opinion, this mindset that somehow or another, again, all of these other attributes of not only being rude but being puffed up and putting ourselves and promoting ourselves before others happens within the closest relationships that God has given to us. And guys, we need to be careful. Because if we'll do it there, we do it anywhere. We need to be so careful and so cautious. And guys, understand that if we will practice and we will build up those that are closest to us, the relationships that we have will be founded in trust. The greatest problems that I have to face in relationship to dealing with people that are struggling with their marriages is that they don't trust each other. Let me tell you what, this is one of the places where trust is built. when they know that you'll never say anything against them. Love does not seek its own. It is not provoked. My wife and I have an agreement that when it's necessary, that we will lovingly remind each other that it's not all about you. I should say we have an agreement that she'll remind me. Because that's normally the way that it works. But the bottom line is that if you ever find yourself being forced or provoked into something that you don't want to do under the title or the banner of, if you love me, you will, it's not love. It's not to be provoked. The reason that I know that love doesn't work that way is because God Himself has never said and forced us and coerced us and threatened us to love Him. You can love me if you want. I want you to. I desire it. I gave my Son in order for you to have eternal life, but it's your choice. No coercion. Oh, a consequence, yes. Compulsion, hopefully. Coercion, no. Love thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. Part of exercising love is putting aside our interpretations of why someone has done something long enough to find out what really happened and if there was a reason behind their action. We struggle with this because far too often it's easier to jump to a conclusion, isn't it? There you go again. I can't believe they did that. Well, if you say that and you start out with the idea of not believing that they did that because it's so unbelievable, there may be some truth in the fact that what they did, they didn't do, so therefore it is unbelievable. Maybe they didn't do what it is that you think that they did, and before you would jump to a conclusion and assign guilt and develop some sort of evil thought back to them, maybe you ought to think that maybe they weren't intending to do harm. This is vital to relationships, and again, even critical within relationship between husbands and wives. I should never think in any way, shape, or form that my wife would purpose to hurt me and think that she intended some sort of evil against me. That shouldn't even be conceptual in my mind that my wife would ever do anything to harm me because of the relationship that God has given us, because of the fact that we are to work together as one flesh, as one unit, with one heart, with one mind before the Lord, being answering to Him first before even each other. And the reality is that if I believe that she has no ill intent, then there's no reason for me to ever think somehow or another that she would purpose to harm me. The simple things. The things that we miss. Oh, I can't believe she didn't even notice. I came home from working all day and she didn't even have dinner ready. What kind of woman is she anyway? Or on the other hand, I come home from a day that is really difficult and hard and I don't feel like talking, and yet she all day has been working to make sure that she's prepared my favorite meal. She went and she put on that outfit that one time I said, hey, you look really good in that. Hoping that somehow or another that there would be the opportunity for us to just be able to draw together and to come closer, because it's been rough, it's been hard, the weeks have been long, the work has been overwhelming, and yet there's this desire on her part to fix the meal and to present herself in such a way, and I come in and instead of even acknowledging it, I throw my coat on the floor, I sit down, I wolf down a few bites, and then I go plop myself in front of the TV and veg out. The whole time she's thinking, he didn't even notice. He didn't even care that I fixed something to eat. He didn't even speak to me all the way through dinner. He didn't see that I was dressed. You know what? I'm not showing him. I'm not giving him the time of day until he comes around. And then as women do, and I only know this because I've been told, they go down the line of, I wonder if he doesn't love me anymore. I wonder if there's somebody else. I wonder if this means, can anybody relate to this? And all of a sudden you start putting in all of these evil thoughts and intentions, and there's days that are passing, and on the other hand, he's thinking, I can't believe she's being so cold. I can't believe that she's not paying attention to any of my needs. I can't believe she's separating out. Maybe she doesn't care for me anymore. And the reality is that it all started behind a bad day with bad news that he was trying to withhold from her in order not to hurt her. And now 3 days have passed. And the enemy has gained all kinds of ground over what should have been and could have been a coming together in such a way that there would have been mutual support and care and encouragement and love and adoration. Guys, we get to choose this. We get to determine whether or not we want to have it this way or not. We're told that we're supposed to make up quickly with brothers and sisters in the event of an offense. We're not supposed to let time grow in between what we would think is an offense and allow it to be able to grow from a lizard into Godzilla. We're not supposed to let something get out of shape and out of sorts based on thinking evil when evil really was not intended. And then it says that love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Because I love you, I will bear with you even when things are really hard and not going my way. If you're unable to carry it, I'll carry it for you. Because I love you, I will believe what you tell me, and I'll make our relationship safe and honest. Because I love you, I'll always hope the best for you, and I will try within my hardest to give you that which is your desire, putting your needs above mine. And I'm going to be true. I'm going to endure. I'm going to take and trust in God that He is supreme, and not only supreme, but the author of love, and therefore will support the love that I demonstrate and show to you. So as we get ready to close today, here's what I want you to hold on to. Here's the takeaway for today. First, I really want you to ponder the Ferris wheel. I want you to appreciate Arizona for joining the union. I want you to check that box on your organ donor card on your driver's license the next time you renew. But more so, I want you to think about the love that God has for each of us. The love that He lavishes on us that we don't deserve. The love that is perfect, that brought salvation through His Son, Jesus Christ. And folks, here's the thing. If today you were not too excited about the idea of Valentine's Day just because it just doesn't reach where you are right now, I want you to understand that if you need a Valentine today, Jesus Christ is the perfect answer and response. I leave you with His words as recorded in John 13:34 and 35. It says, "A new commandment that I give you, that you would love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. And by this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." With that, happy Valentine's Day.